You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So everybody's been talking about Portland, because Portland's just got some craziness going on right now, specifically shootings. We had the protesting, the peaceful protesting all summer, the federal buildings in Portland. Now we've got the gun violence that's just not looking good. We've got some discussion of massive amounts of trash throughout Portland. I mean, you've got some issues there that aren't going to get resolved real quick. Today, what we're covering is a question and answer with Portland's mayor, Ted Wheeler. Let's see what Uncle Ted, let's see what terrible Ted has to say, what he's thinking, what moves he's going to make Portland a better place to live in, because it needs it. It needs some help. And then the bonus article, we're going to talk about some of the stuff happening here in King County, why convicted felons are running around in the streets willy-nilly because of the court system and COVID. Let's check that out as well. If you're new here, my name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, and I give you the news that you like to hear. All right, let's jump on in. Question and answer with Wheeler. Shootings, protests, and whether Portland is dying. We've got the whole Seattle is dying, fight for the soul of Seattle. So much drama, so much stuff. But the storylines, I mean, you can make fun of the whole Seattle's not dying. It's not Chicago. I mean, it's not Detroit. I don't know why I said Chicago, because that's another city with a lot of shootings in it. But, these stories they're pretty horrific. When you start looking at the number of the gun violence going on, I mean, they're some pretty shocking numbers. Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler sat down remotely with KOIN 6 News on Thursday to answer our questions about skyrocketing gun violence in the city, the protests, livability issues, and the increasingly hostile political climate that has resulted in the mayor hiring security to accompany him when he's out in public. What does that tell you about your city when your mayor has to go out with a full security force? Interesting, right? Editor's note. We're not going to read that. Nobody cares. Question. At various times in the past couple of months, there have been talks about bringing the gun violence reduction team. Talked about this quite a bit. The GVRT, or something similar back. They got rid of it. Gun violence went up. Shocking. I know, right? It's like, okay. We got rid of all the police officers. I don't understand why there's this lawlessness pervading our society now. I don't get it. I don't understand. I kind of thought that when we got rid of all the police officers, everybody would just behave. That doesn't seem to be the case. Oh, well, it's a social experiment. It went a little sideways, but we've learned a lot. We've reimagined. We've rethought. We're getting places, people. Where do those talks stand now about we're talking about bringing the gun violence reduction team back? Where do those talks stand now? And do you believe the disbanding of the GVRT had anything to do with the spike in shootings? That's a loaded question, isn't it? It is. It's like, did that have anything to do with the spike in shooting? Oh, maybe. Let's see what Ted says. Ted says, the spike that we're seeing in gun violence and homicides is definitely the city's top public safety priority right now. I think that is a true statement Mayor Ted made there. People shooting each other, not a good thing. That does not bring to mind a safe public image for the city of Portland, does it? First, we're working on the prevention and intervention side. We've increased the funding through the Office of Violence Prevention that helps us establish more community interactions and work with organizations throughout the community to help reduce gun violence. All right. You've basically told me nothing. I don't really know. What is it that you're doing? How are you going to make this better? Does that sounds like political speak to me. I don't know. It tends to just spread just like a virus. We treat it the same way as a public health issue. Okay, what does that mean? What are you doing? Don't understand. On the second front, we're working with law enforcement at the federal level, at the state level, with our partners in Multnomah County, and of course here in the Portland Police Bureau. We have 11 officers that are now detailed specifically toward gun violence. We're also working with a consultancy called the California Partnership. They're helping us to create a comprehensive strategy to reduce gun violence in Portland, and I believe that will have a significant impact. I think the only thing that's going to have a significant impact, if people understand, if they run around shooting each other, they'll go to jail for a very long time. That's the only way I see it. All this other stuff, yeah, it's good, and it'd probably help long term. You got a massive problem right now today. You need to take some of those people off the streets, throw them in jail for a long time. That's just me. I'm a real estate guy. I don't like to see things that impact real estate markets. Call me selfish because, I come from the pro-business, pro-real estate side of things. But, when you've got people running around in neighborhoods shooting each other willy-nilly, that is not so good for resale value. I got to be honest. I can't lie. I hate it when people say, I can't lie. I got to tell you that. Well, of course. Of course you're going to tell me you can't lie. That's silliness, right? I can't lie. When people are shooting each other, running around neighborhoods, not good for resale. Ugh. I want to have that on a Form 17, which is what our MLS version of the seller disclosure. People running around neighborhood shooting each other. Not good. I mean, seriously, what's going on in some of these neighborhoods in Portland? It is just a shooting gallery, right? In what ways is this different? We're talking about Mayor Ted responding to they got rid of the gun violence reduction team. In what ways is this different from the original GVRT? This is far more comprehensive. Now we're talking Mayor Ted. This is far more comprehensive. I convened recently with several law enforcement partners, our state and our county and other local law enforcement partners, and really for the first time working as a cohesive team to address the specific issues around gun violence. What about the prosecutors and the court system who, when you arrest people, just throw them back out on the streets willy-nilly? How about that side of the equation? Because that's where it seems, I'm not blaming the police. I think the police arrest as many of these cases as they can, but they're short on staff, right? And when they do arrest somebody, what happens to them? Sorry for the intrusion on your life. Here's your get out of, jail free card. Why don't you go out there and try and do better? We know you've been convicted 100, 150 times, but this is the time that we are confident you're going to turn the corner and become a better human being and maybe not stab somebody like you just did for, and that's why you're in here. Maybe less on the violence, more of a better person out there. Good luck with that. Hope not to see you again, but if we do, we'll say hi again. That's literally what's going on, right? So how is that different? A bunch of political speak. That's kind of what I see here. Here's another question. Moving on to protests. It's been just over a month since you announced several commitments in response to the New Year's Eve riot. What's the status of those? Let's hear what Mayor Ted's going to say about the peaceful protesters. I have, in fact, convened with our local law enforcement at all levels of government. We all have a vested interest in reducing this criminal violence. But now it is criminal violence? What? Oh, this is shocking. This criminal violence and destruction. Now it's no longer peaceful protesting. It's violence and destruction. This is a lot to work through that we're seeing, and we're now collaborating in ways that we didn't previously, because previously this was peaceful protesting. And then all of a sudden it's become violence and destruction. How the narrative changes. I also have met several times with the district attorney to clarify what we need to provide in terms of evidence to be able to make strong cases that he can then prosecute. How hard is it to make these cases? These knuckleheads make this so obvious. It's not like we're doing this clandestine, right? We're not doing the spy version of peaceful protesting. You're bashing out windows of storefronts. You are hammering on federal buildings in clear sight. Make a strong case with the prosecutor. So we're developing better protocols around providing solid evidence. Okay, how hard could this possibly be? Everybody's on videotape. It's not that hard, right? I've also made it clear to the district attorney that I support restorative justice, and by that I mean not just throwing people in jail, but sometimes having those individuals who break a window at a shop be required to meet with the business owners and some of the employees and hear from them directly what the economic and social costs are of the damage they've created. In a perfect world, I think that would be good for these criminals to hear, but this is so far beyond that no, that's, I didn't realize the impact that my breaking your storefront and ripping everything off from my opioid addiction had on you. I didn't consider that. When I get out of treatment, I'm going to be a better person. These people are not going to treatment. They don't care. They're just looking for something to do. Maybe they're hitting up for their next fix. And the protesters, they're just creating havoc because that's what they do. So I don't, that approach is, I think it's wishful thinking and just that. It's wishful. We're reimagining, we're rethinking, we're re-hoping things get better. And in the meantime, crime stats skyrocket. I think that we can make an economic impact, particularly with some of these younger kids who are involved in this destruction. All right, agree. Where we have not made progress is on strengthening penalties for repeat offenders. And I'm just going to be honest with you, there's no appetite for it. I find this interesting. And the question from media here is, when you say there's no appetite for it, who specifically is not interested? Here's Wheeler's response. At all levels of government, from the state, the legislature, the county, local, the push for the last 10 years has actually been to decriminalize and reduce sentences, not go the other way. How's that working out? That would be my question. Okay, so crime is on the rise. You got a downtown core that's been just ravaged by the peaceful protesters and just crime in general and homelessness. So how's that going for you? Is it getting better? Because, if it was getting better, then I could work with that. If it's not, then you gotta look at something a little differently, maybe. I don't know. I'm just saying that out. All right. So let's talk about the Forbes column that included the line, "Reputation may be Portland's greatest damage." There is a lot to that. If you have a bad reputation, you're not gonna get the same opportunities other cities are, right? And that impacts a lot of business. People aren't going to want to set up new businesses. People are going to take existing businesses that once worked well, and they are going to take them elsewhere. Owners don't want to have an ownership stake in a city that just looks like a train wreck. New businesses don't want to go there. I talk all the time about if you are running convention type business or if you are tourism, the look that Portland has and the look that downtown Seattle has right now, those are not looks that you are willing to subject your clientele to. You know what? We're going to skip them and we're going to go elsewhere because just what people have to deal with. It's like, where are you bringing us? We don't want to be here. So all of those businesses work together because when you don't bring a big convention into town, all of the restaurants, all of the subsidiary businesses that support those people coming to town, they're gone as well because they don't have the numbers to support them. They don't have the number of consumers to support them. Real estate takes a whack. The tax structure for the city takes a whack. It's all melted together. And you can't just take one little component, which is like, well, the storefronts, they're boarded up and they don't look good. That's just the very tip of the iceberg, right? It's all that other stuff that this represents. All right, we're going to unboard all the storefronts. And magically, we're going to take out all the graffiti and we're going to clean the garbage off the streets. That does it. We have solved it. No, you're just masking the situation and you're putting, lipstick on a pig and wanting it to be pretty, and it's not going to be because you haven't done anything about the underlying issues, right? Portland does, and this is Mayor Ted answering about whether Portland is dying. Portland does have a reputation problem right now. Where I disagree is I don't think Portland is dying. A consultancy called As You're Right just completed a study, and what they found was 54% of businesses in, get this, New York, Chicago, LA, and San Francisco plan to close or leave. 54% of businesses in New York, Chicago, LA, or San Francisco. We're part of a national trend. Yes, you are part of a national trend of progressive democratic leadership destroying big cities. New York. Yep. Chicago. Yes, sirree. LA. Yes. San Francisco? Yes. So this isn't a national trend. This is a specific trend. And I thought this was interesting to call out. There's other cities and towns, same size. They don't have these issues. What's going on, Mayor Ted? We're not looking behind the curtain here, are we? What we need to do is get past COVID. We need to get people back safely into our business districts. Good luck with that. My administration's top priorities are addressing safety, homelessness, and livability. Just since July, we've cleaned up something like 2,500 tons of litter. That's awesome. But you had 2,500 tons of litter sitting around your city. That's not awesome. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, but we just cleaned up the backyard. Yeah, because it looked so bad. It looked so terrible. It's like in all my years of appraising, I'm that guy that walks up to the front porch. People don't really know why I'm there. He's doing something with the bank. He's doing something with value in the bank. Be nice to him. Otherwise, we won't get our home loan. And oftentimes you'll roll up to somebody's front porch, and I'm 6'1", so I'm usually always looking down on somebody. And it's kind of that awkward conversation. Hey, I'm here to measure your home. I need to do this, and this. And they will invariably say, oh, I forgot you're coming. If I would have remembered you're coming, I would have cleaned up. And you look around in their house, and it's just a pigsty. It's a pit. Like, borderline hoarder status. This doesn't happen often. But invariably, the people that are the messiest always say, oh, if I would have known, I would have cleaned up. And you're like, yeah, you and an army of how many people and how many dumpsters would this have taken? It's always kind of funny. And so it's like, just since July, we've cleaned up something like 2,500 tons of litter. Great. That's a start. But how are you going to get to the point where you don't have that litter put there in the first place? That's my question. That's what business leaders look at, not the lipstick. The reality of, is this going to change in the future? Because if it's not, I'm not running my business here. This sucks. We have invested extra resources. We're back to Mayor Ted and his wisdom here. We have invested extra resources into graffiti abatement, and people are already starting to notice some of that difference. Good. That's good. I think it's good that you clean up graffiti in public areas. But how are you going to get to the point where you don't have to do the cleanup as much anymore? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Don't know. We don't really have a game for that, though we are reimagining and rethinking damn near everything, right? For the most problematic homeless camps that are creating safety, livability, public health, or environmental hazards, we've removed 125 of those camps and cleaned them up since just this summer, and we're creating more humane alternatives to people living on the streets. All right, let's hear about that. What are you doing? And the fewer people living on the streets will obviously help restore some of the reputational damage that we've experienced over the last several months. Is this a temporary thing, or is this an ongoing? Or are you going to get hard? You're going to hold a hard line with the homelessness. You're going to have to at some point. Otherwise, literally, downtown Portland is like, geez, no, don't want to go there. Don't go there. Here's another question. You recently had to take the unfortunate step of having security with you every time you go out in public. Is this problem unique or indicative of hostility towards politicians in general? No, just Mayor Ted, I believe, right? I mean, he's basically being run out of his own city. There is definitely, and I did a podcast last week on Shama Sawant, one of our Seattle City Council members. She was kind of confronted at the grocery store. She was looking to buy some fruit, and she kind of had to do an exit stage left because somebody was fairly confrontational with her, and she was by herself. So I think the more of those situations you get, the more you're like, yeah, you know what? I kind of need a bodyguard. And yeah, I'm going to start packing because people are not pleased with my job. I guess I haven't done a great job. People want to harm me. Wheeler. Here's Wheeler's response to, is this a problem unique or indicative of hostility towards politicians in general? Only the ones that people think aren't doing a great job, I believe. Because if you're doing a good job, people are like, oh yeah, hey, Mayor Ted, good job, well done. There is definitely a deterioration of civility in our society. Is there? Or just towards you? I am regularly confronted by constituents. I actually don't mind engaging with people when I'm out and about, but where I draw the line is violence. That's funny. The residents of Portland said all summer they drew the line in violence as well, but Mayor Ted, you allowed it to happen for over 120 straight days. But now the election is over. Oh, I get it. We don't like violence. It's interesting how that works, isn't it? I draw the line against people who are trying to inflict personal injury on me or the people I'm with. Don't worry about those federal buildings in Portland, though. Those are still fair game. Just hammer on those. I draw the line at people coming to my home or coming to other people's homes and vandalizing those homes because they want somebody to vote on a certain issue a certain way. None of us should accept that as a standard. I have never wanted to have security. I think it's not the best use of public resources. I will probably never use Portland police officers because there's already a shortage of officers in the community, and I don't think it's fair for me as an elected official to lay claim to those resources. So I've used pepper spray. I did a podcast on Mayor Ted. Guy wouldn't let him get in his car. An attorney wouldn't let him get in his car. Mayor Ted said, I'm going to pepper spray you. You know what Mayor Ted did then? He pepper sprayed him. You know what the guy said? I can't believe you pepper sprayed me. Oh, I need some milk for my eyes. So I've used pepper spray. Mayor Ted using pepper spray. But I am now being the very same thing that Mayor Ted and a lot of other of these ridiculous mayors have said, you pepper sprayed the peaceful protesters. But when something mildly confrontational happens, mind you, the guy that Mayor Ted pepper sprayed was filming him. He had a camera. He had his phone out. He was videoing Mayor Ted. That's not violence. But Mayor Ted came through with the violence, the pepper spray. When the police do it, it's out of control. It's abuse of power, right? That's the double standard we've always got going on. So I used pepper spray, but I am now being strongly encouraged by our city's legal team and others that I should at least use private sector security when I'm out in the community. I will do so. I will do so only when necessary, but unfortunately we've come to the point where that's necessary because nobody likes me and everybody has it out for me, and I am scared. I wish it wasn't, but it is. That's how Mayor Ted ends this. So that's Mayor Ted. That's what's going on in Mayor Ted's world. He's got a tough gig, right? He's got a tough job. And it's not a pretty thing down there. He kind of let a lot of this stuff get out of control, and he's going to have to deal with the consequences. And there's going to be a lot of storylines out of that, right? Because, I mean, it's just, it's a train wreck, and we all knew it. We all knew it was going to happen. I'll keep following it for you, though. All right, let's jump into historic level of court backlogs leaves criminals on the King County streets. What's going on? We're going to blame it on COVID. So why do we have this big, huge backlog? Well, the court's been closed. Let's check it out. This has to do with the same exact thing. What are we doing with the underlying problems? It's not the cleanup. It's not the cleanup of graffiti. It's get to the bottom of that issue. How do you handle it? Patrick Kindness is, and this is a Como News article, Patrick Kindness is well known to police, to homeless providers, and businesses. In October 2019, he threatened Kristen Edwards, a manager of a bar in Ballard, with a knife. Ballard is a Norwegian old sailing community, fishing community. In Seattle, just north of downtown. He threatened somebody in a bar with a knife. At the time, Kindness had more than 100 convictions in a criminal history that goes back 30 years. Why isn't this guy behind bars? At first, he denied the incident, but pled guilty in February 2020 to intimidation with a weapon and served several weeks in jail and was released. Several weeks? You threaten somebody with a knife and you get several weeks? That's what we're doing in Seattle. Kindness was arrested again May 8th. So the first date was October 19th, so not long after, May 8th, and accused of assaulting two people and harassing a third person near Pike Place Market. He was released from jail days later on his own personal promise, his own PR, that he would return for his arraignment. We need you to promise you'll be back. Charges were filed by the city attorney in June, but he has yet to be arraigned and remains out of custody. So what do you think is happening? What are these guys doing in the meantime? Are they on the straight and narrow, knowing, all right, I got that court case, so I'm just gonna be a good person. I'm gonna go to church. I'm gonna help people. I'm not going to litter. I'm not going to threaten others. I'm not going to pull a knife on somebody at the bar. No, they're going to do the exact same thing that they've been doing all along. So there's a reason for courts, why he's just not in jail. Courts in King County and Seattle are hemorrhaging. That's a strong word, hemorrhaging. After a summer of protests, there have been complaints at the lack of prosecution and jail for people accused of resisting arrest, failure to disperse, and vandalism. Yeah, we had a whole summer and just none of these guys are in jail. Do better next time. Come on back and see us. Ridiculous. But the reasons behind why they're not in jail are less about politics and more to do with COVID-19 and the case counts because of an increase in violent crime. For example, municipal court is not doing any out-of-custody arraignments, said Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkin, who was once the U.S. Attorney for Western Washington. Well, you can't start the who criminal process until someone has been arraigned, so we have to fix all parts of it. Why aren't we, COVID aside, you got to uphold the law. Figure it out. Every other industry has figured this out. Get this going again. I don't understand. COVID. Figure it out. Seattle Municipal Court judges stopped out-of-custody arraignments for social distancing purposes inside courtrooms and the jail in November. How about you do a remote one? How about that? How about you set up some remote sessions inside the courtroom, whatever. Hey, your appointment is now. Let's get this going. And you do it remotely. Surely in Seattle, we can figure out the technology to do that, right? Since then, court records show 525 out-of-custody cases have not been arraigned. Every one of those defendants had been booked into jail and released with the promise that they will appear at their arraignment. PR, personal recognizance. Will you promise to come back? Yes, I do, if you'll just let me out of here. Okay, be a good person. Come on back. I promise, Scout's honor. There's a historic level of backlogs. Included on this list is Patrick Kindness for the alleged assaults and harassment 9 months ago. Even a prolific offender like Kindness with over 100 convictions remains free, waiting for their day in court. His situation is indicative of a wider problem. We are at a historic level of backlogs, King County Prosecutor Dan Sattenberg told the King County Council this week. Normal pre-COVID backlog of felony cases that have been filed but not yet resolved hovered around 3,000. Okay, we are probably about 7,000 now, and it could be 10,000 cases before we get back to work in the middle of the summer. So that's what's going on, folks. You've got maybe 10,000 criminals running around the streets willy-nilly doing their criming because the court system can't figure out how to get them prosecuted. There is pressure to keep the jail population down because of state Supreme Court order and a move by King County executive to reduce the size of the jail's population in a money-saving move. You know what? I'm sorry your wife was assaulted and your kid, had his leg broken by the assailant. However, we're trying to save money at the jail and we just let him out. Sorry about that. That's a bummer. We'll try and do better next time. That's what it literally feels like, right? I mean, where are our taxpayers' dollars going to? Certainly not to keep our city streets safe, right? That has led to greater pressure on the jail, something I'm keenly aware of. We're aware, we're reimagining, we're rethinking. We're just not doing anything. And this was said by Jim Rogers, the presiding judge of King County Superior Court. We worked very hard to get the jail population down from an average daily jail population of about 1,900 to 1,400, Satterberg said. But police have not stopped arresting people for minor and major crimes. Seattle saw a near record 50 homicides in 2020 compared to 31 the year before. It's putting pressure on prosecutors and the courts to decide who is really needed to be in jail for public safety reasons and who should remain out of custody for economic reasons. So Kindness represents what's happening on the street. Kindness is the dude again with 100 convictions, but he's just running around willy-nilly. People waiting for out-of-custody arraignments are continuing to commit crimes. Like I said earlier, are they just being good boys sitting on the sideline waiting it out till they get their court hearing? No, they're out doing their criming thing, right? The chief judge of King County District Court told council members her experience while presiding over a series of bail hearings one day last week. This was her experience. I saw probably close to 10 people who had felonies pending that they've been released on, yet they are still breaking into people's homes. Is this trend going to go away? Is it, if we make all these crimes misdemeanors, and if we get rid of all these misdemeanors, is this crime going to go away? Are they going to stop breaking into people's homes? I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to make a wild prediction. Granted, I am a real estate guy. I'm going to say No. These crimes are not going to stop happening, right? They're just going to keep going. While judges, prosecutors, and public defenders all said they want alternatives to jail, the pretrial diversion programs that they want have not been set up to scale to handle the onslaught of cases coming from police departments across the county. I can't overstate the magnitude of the problem, said Jim Rogers, the presiding judge of King County Superior Court. If we dismissed or the prosecutor's office dismissed every nonviolent case in the system, it would take us some years to get through the violent cases. They're wildly backed up. That's why you've got all these criminals running around on the streets, and we don't have the horsepower to get through it. Algorithm helps decide who is prosecuted first. Satterberg said his office is choosing to spend its energy prosecuting the most violent crimes first with the help of an algorithm. It doesn't seem to be working because those guys are still out there doing the criming thing, right? We do have a formula. It's an algorithm that we've developed to help us make the best decision about which of those hundreds and hundreds of potential cases that we could file, that we should file, Satterberg said. All this may help explain why keeping someone in jail before their trial, except in the most violent cases, is not happening as much as many in the public would like to see. Well, that's because the public would like to see the streets a little safer. And the way you make them safer, you take the ones doing the criming off of them and put them in jail. Whether you have the money or not, figure it out. That's what the taxpayers' money is supposed to go towards. Am I wrong here? Am I out of bounds here? Man, this stuff just doesn't, and there's not much left in the rest of, here's actually an interesting one. Durkin has continued to emphasize that violent protesters will see justice. People participating in protests, they're breaking windows, they are being violent, they need to be held accountable. That's what Trump said, and you know what? Everybody hammered on him. When Trump said, hey, we're going to send in the troops, just tell me the word, everybody was like, oh, that is overstepping federal boundaries. We can handle this. Plus, they're not violent rioters. They're not breaking windows. They don't need to be held accountable. That's literally what all these politicians said, Durkin included. Durkin said, this is a summer of love. Summer of love. Until it wasn't. So people participating in protests, they're breaking windows. They are being violent. So the election is over, and now this is the story. They need to be held accountable. Well, they need to be held accountable before. And in Portland, they need to be held accountable for that 120-day stretch where they're just hammering on the federal buildings, running around, doing their little dance, song and dance, their violent rioting. They need to be held accountable then. But you let it get out of control, here's where we're at. Plus, I don't have any real confidence that, they're going to actually do anything to these protesters, because then everybody would just be all a Twitter, right? I mean, we'd all be worked up. Oh, the peaceful protesters, they got put in jail. What? Can't have that. They're just protesting with a ball-peen hammer on that window at Starbucks. You know what I mean? All right. So that's it for me on this one. I think we've kind of beaten this one to death, but a lot of crazy stuff going on, but now maybe you've got a little bit more insight. Okay, yeah, it is some COVID, but most of it's just political leadership and what we're not doing. But what we are doing is reimagining, rethinking, reworking, but no real action. And you know what? It gives me a lot to talk about, because you can kind of sit and cherry pick this stuff and go, oh, yeah, didn't see that one coming. Do better next time. All right, you guys, thanks so much for being here. I'd love to have you subscribe if you so see fit. If not, do your thing. I'll catch up with you guys in the next one. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.